your conversations, particularly around the edges of the Assembly Hall, and to please take your seats in the designated areas for chiefs, proxies, and of course observers and guests. By way of the order of the day, has been explained a couple times this morning as we drew people into the room. We will begin with opening remarks by the National Chief. We will be joined by the Minister of Crown and Indigenous Relations for Canada, Minister Bennett. We note that Minister Philpott, the Indigenous Services Canada Minister, is unable to be with us due to a death in the family, and we acknowledge that and pay our respects to her for that and understand the work that she needs to do. Following that, we will then turn to Six Nations for a discussion of a criminal justice matter and a recent acquittal in the sense of injustice that has created. And then we will also turn to an honoring for Regional Chief Mike Smith from the Yukon, recently passed Regional Chief. We will see where we are on the timing at that point. We have a note in the agenda about if time available. We will move to a few of the resolutions. Otherwise, we will proceed to the dialogue sessions, get you there as close to 10:30 as we can. Those are 7 critical discussion topics, the only opportunities we'll have given the abbreviated nature of our assembly due to our work in the previous days. We will return here at 1 o'clock. We'll have a few informational videos as you arrive regarding next year's annual General Assembly and some work that AFOA Canada is doing. And then we will proceed to brief reports from those dialogue sessions and the resolutions related, and then proceed to the remainder of our resolutions throughout the day. And so we will need your cooperation on that. And there is time for a lunch break today. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, please take your chairs, wrap up your conversations, and help me welcome to the podium our National Chief, Perry Bellegarde.
Thank you, Harold, and good morning, friends and relatives and chiefs. Again, third day of our assembly, and we're ready to work here, and thank you for showing up on the last day. Since it's formally, officially in this capacity now as re-elected National Chief Nistamina, I want to hold my hands up to the Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh and Musqueam nations and tribes for welcoming us to their traditional ancestral lands. I want to do that protocol with great respect. As well this morning to the pipe ceremony that was held back here, and I participated again in this capacity as an Escapius, as a servant or helper, so I want to acknowledge the elders for their prayers and their ceremony this morning in a very respectful way to start us off in a good way on the last day of our assembly, because they acknowledged and prayed for all of our relatives here, those ones that are going to have to be traveling back home. They prayed for many, many things, so I lift them up and I thank them. To my colleagues on the executive as well, good morning. To all of the ones that are here. We have an agenda in front of us, chiefs. But before we get right to it, the last few days, 2 or 3 days, there's been passing. As we know, this journey here in this physical world is short. The next world is the long time, spiritual good place, and there's a number of people that have made their journey. And I want to take some time, and if you'll help me in a moment of silence to think of not only these ones I mentioned, there's probably others that you know from your home territories and tribes and nations that have passed as well within the last 3 days. But these ones I mentioned, I'm going to mention their name because I know them. And they're long-time leaders, long-time chiefs, and counselors. And if you'd just rise with me for a moment of silence to acknowledge all of our loved ones that have passed, but in particular, a good friend of mine and colleague from the Pasqua First Nations, Lindsay Sear, passed away last few days. And he was a longtime chief, longtime counselor, served, he was a vice chief in the FSIN. So to his family and his community and nation, we extend our condolence sympathies, and we pray for that fast journey to that good place, that good clean place. Chief Miller Nawakias from the Red Earth Cree Nation passed away yesterday, a few days ago. And longtime friend and advocate for treaty rights, nationhood, sovereignty. He's making his journey as well. And so to the Nawakias family and the Red Earth Cree Nation, we extend our condolence sympathies. And then to show our kindness and love and respect, our colleague and friend, and we're all the two-legged family and tribe of peoples throughout the world, Minister Philpott's father as well passed. And so we extend our condolences and sympathies to the Philpott family. We know that's hurt and pain. So all of us, and I'm sure there's everyone in this room that can think of someone in the last few days. And with great respect, my apologies for not mentioning others, but these ones come to mind that have been brought to my attention. So with great respect, we take the time now to think of the ones not mentioned, but as well those three that I have mentioned. And if we can put our minds and hearts for a moment of silence in prayer. Hi, Kanaskum Tinoa. Thank you so much, chiefs and colleagues. Now this morning, not to take too much more time, we know there's an agenda we have to follow, chiefs, that you've passed. We take your direction, and we do have a formal piece to get through. We have lots of resolutions we have on our strategy going forward, dealing with rights and title. We have the rights recognition framework dialogue and discussion we're going to have, or a debate on, and how we move forward to move past the Indian Act. And part of that is bringing the Crown representatives. So I believe Minister Bennett is here as well. She's part of the agenda. I don't know where she is. Where is she? Oh, she's here. Minister Bennett, come on. I think you're going to be called up soon. You come on up. I know you caused some controversy. No, I was kidding. But it was the Alberta Chiefs that invited her, so but welcome. Like, it's the Alberta Chiefs want you. You responded, so you went. It's all about accessibility. So, but welcome. And just before we go to the minister, as well, I'm going to call up Regional Chief Archibald as well to the podium. And there's a piece we missed because prayer, we say there's one creator and there's many roads to the creator. And prayer is powerful. And so I'm going to ask Regional Chief Archibald from Ontario to come up and say some words. And there's some chiefs we want to call up, I believe. And I'm just going to turn the podium over to her for these words. And there's a little piece of ceremony we want to conclude as well. Chief.
Miigwech, National Chief, I want to honor the protocols and acknowledge the territory of the Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Squamish lands that we're standing on, all the families, relatives, and ancestors. I also want to acknowledge the sacred items in this room and acknowledge all of you. Yesterday, we saw the swearing-in ceremony, and one of our chiefs in Ontario noticed that we have many beliefs across Canada. We're diverse communities, and there are chiefs who have Christian faith, and they wanted to do a blessing of the national chief. And the blessing is really a prayer, a laying of hands on, and a prayer that he has a good mandate and a good journey in his leadership. So I wanted to call up a number of chiefs that I know. If you're in the room, please come forward. Chief Alan Jolly from Moquebec, Deputy Chief Victor Linklater from Tago-Tagamo, Chief Donnie Morris from Kitchinabegay, Big Trout Lake, Chief Darlene Chichu, I was told, from Washkagonish, and any chiefs who have the Christian denomination who do want to lay their hands and do a prayer for our national chief are welcome to come up now and do that blessing so that he has a good journey for the next 3 years.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Good.
Go ahead.
Mia, Chimek Swigduchi, Donny Morrison in a go Makan. Gaining Shomak, no Kumagan shots. I am Haunik. I am doing 1 Peter's 2:13. Kidomagan. How I got dog mamiak gaining. It's a night toak. Chinigana starak. Chiktenemarak. Onen Mando Gana Satsokuman. Mies de Botaman. Dob my shim nam, Jesus Christ. Mando. Ogionastanugan and Chiniganistamago, Skizga. Miche de Botamoga Gabagit Naman. Hebrews 13:17. Gaydomagan. Not Tog mam. We don't kim. A God's man in Mugak, Quack Chantkagwak. Michogani Gabagit man. I wish Samanak Nikchodog Makanum. When a night talk, only gan hek, Momoji against New Yan. Miogaj Bikijang in Debnoes Kaminagan, where she gave Czech Dr. Samnaka and Dog Mam Gainin. Shibagi Kawaga and Mumakawa.
She's not in the crowd right now. Okay. No, she's busy writing. Okay. Okay.
Jesus showing him how he showed up Makanum. Training Senate of Mojigo. Buxton the more gave which got which and the gay shown back to be shot. They got one that's daughter. That's that in a chip shot. Minatawano gave in and snow take it. They were Tamonagami now and Chokma. Mamo and Snow Marad, Shivagis, Lujan, Muniga, Danski, German said. The Belgian chance we John again, Mashkogabo, Shawuch, and again, the next
Hey. Thank you so much. Brothers and sisters. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much for that prayer and that energy and that lifting of spirit to the chiefs and Chief Archibald. Thank you for that. And there was another, I know we already acknowledged, but David Janvier. Another passing that my colleague said to remember, acknowledge. David Janvier is another person that's making their journey, and that's Chief Vern Janvier's close relative, his father. And so again, we include those thoughts and prayers and sympathies to the Janvier family. So my colleagues and friends and chiefs, if we can put our energy and thoughts and minds now, and we're going to call up Minister Bennett to have some words about a very important piece of work going forward, and how we always say, yes, we have to work together, and we have to find that good common ground. But as First Nations and treaty holders and rights and title holders, we have to be involved, and we have to be part of that process and help drive that process so it doesn't go off the road in a wrong way. And so we always have to have access to have dialogue. And we don't always agree on everything, but you can try to find common ground. But we don't want to do anything to jeopardize our rights and title in our treaties. So with great respect, we offer those words, and we're going to call you to the podium and to make some comments, because things have to go in a good way. And when you do things in a good way, you find that good common space. And it's all about dialogue, listening and respecting each other's points of view. And you can find that good common ground when you do that. So chiefs and delegates, please help me welcome Minister Bennett to our assembly.
Good morning. Bonjour. Israel. C'est une grande honneur d'être parmi vous ce matin.
Honor that I'm with you for the 39th AGM of the Assembly of First Nations to work together for our future.
As always, to be here on the Coast Salish territory and with the territory of Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish, and I too acknowledge Eagle staff, and but I think I want to start by acknowledging the elders, Gwen Point and Bobby Joe, for starting us in such a good way on Tuesday morning. When Elder Gwen said, this is what hope looks like, I couldn't help but think of the children in their regalia and the songs in their language, and that this is actually what the work we need to do to make sure that health, education, and economic outcomes are better when children grow up feeling proud of who they are. And I thank all of the host territories for starting us in such a good way. Bobby Joe, when you talked about harmony and balance and interconnectedness, but it was the sort of yearning for freedom that I think is the reason that we are really needing to work together, as it's the theme of this conference. And I think that I keep quoting Regional Chief Teegee when we began this process of asking questions like, what's the greatest barrier to self-determination? And the Regional Chief took the book and wrote "you" straight in the, there were about 4 lines, but he had big capitals of "you." And so I think that's really what I want to talk about today, is how do we get out of the way such that you can move more quickly on the path of self-determination, but also how do we as Canada make sure that we are held accountable for the agreements that we have signed and for the honor of the Crown in upholding the inherent in treaty rights that are yours from time immemorial. I acknowledge Minister Philpott's absence, and I remember when I lost my father, and it really does just seem like yesterday. I think that you lose an anchor, and so I know you understand that she is where she should be with her family, and I'm so blessed to have such an amazing partner in this journey. As you know, we sit literally joined at the hip at question period and all of the votes, and we try and get stuff sorted out so that really there is this doubling of effort and what we hope is 2 and 2 makes 5 in the new math of how we go forward across all government departments. Je suis très heureux d'être ici avec mon collègue Dan.
Happy to be here, Dan Lytle, of the Deputy of St. Boniface.
That serves as the Parliamentary Secretary to Dr. Philpott. We also acknowledge all of the executive here and our newly elected chief, who I just answered in a scrum, is this about the status quo? And I said, absolutely. I don't think any of the candidates were talking about a status quo in the speeches I heard, and I congratulate the re-elected national chief for us really committing together to move beyond the status quo. It's really not acceptable. But I do want to talk a tiny bit about what happened yesterday, and I know there was a concern raised about Ottawa meddling in your affairs, and I have to say I certainly had no intention of upsetting people by accepting an invitation of a newly elected regional chief to hear from the chiefs in her region about their urgent concerns. And so I have far too much respect for all of you to ever try to influence your decisions. You are amongst the most principled and determined people I've ever met. And the thing that characterizes your decisions is that you will always make decisions on what is best for your people. And so I think that every day you're fighting for self-determination, every day you're fighting to take decisions about your land and your people back into your hands. And so that's really what we want to talk about this morning, is how do we permanently get Ottawa out of the way of everything that you are doing in your communities and in your nations. As we heard from the candidates on Tuesday, the status quo is just not okay. We have to work every day to close those gaps in housing and health and education. We have to move from what was an approach of Canada of a denial of rights, where you had to claim your rights and go to court to prove your rights, into a recognition of your rights straight off. That means, how do we accelerate, as it says in my mandate letter, your progress beyond the Colonial Indian Act to full self-determination? It means that the failed comprehensive claims policy, the failed inherent rights policy have to be history. It means that you shouldn't be negotiating your self-determination on the basis of loans. And so that we know that we actually need to be able to support those conversations, and that we know that as we've heard from the Modern Treaty Group yesterday, that extinguishment needs to be off the table as we acknowledge the kinds of agreements that will evergreen and not be frozen in time. The need for redress for collective harms is very clear, but it is also clear that you've been clear to me that honoring the spirit and intent of the treaties is hugely important. The importance of the land, the importance of title, resource revenue sharing, and as you will hear this morning, dealing still upfront with racism and the need for real justice instead of a legal system. You need real justice for your people. You want Canada to acknowledge the inherent rights from time immemorial. That didn't start in 1982, and they didn't start on February 14th, 2018 in the Prime Minister's speech. These are rights that you were born with, and they are in your soul, and your ancestors want us to do honorably in terms of how we implement those rights in a timely fashion. This week at Wet'suwet'en reminded me of the Delamute case. The Chief Justice then had said we're all here to stay. But in order to sort out the living conditions, we should choose negotiation, not litigation. And so we are asking for your help in crafting a legal framework that is really about the implementation of inherent and treaty rights, and it's about holding Canada to account. This framework is not about defining rights, and it's certainly not about creating municipal governments. It's about breathing life into the commitment that was made in Section 35, recognizing and affirming the inherent and treaty rights. It really is about the honor of the Crown. It's about recognizing also the body of legal decisions that since 1982 have provided a very muscular protection of your rights. Scholars have said that the legal framework needs to represent a reorientation of Canada from the denial of rights approach to ensuring real choices for First Nations. Over 320 of your communities are now at a table discussing how you want to exercise your rights and jurisdiction. Some of you are discussing an education system. Some of you are discussing child and family services. Some of you are discussing a fishery. But for over half of you, you are cutting a new trail off the trodden path of colonialism and the dead end that Miles talked about in his video, the dead end that is the Indian Act. So this week, I was able to sign 3 agreements. This was about choices. This is about different communities choosing their path off the Indian Act trail. It was in the northern Secwepemc 25 years later that we were able to sign their agreement in principle. But on the same day, we were able to sign with Southern Dakhel Nation and Alliance an MOU where that conversation only began a year ago. And so that's the kind of progress I'm expected to make in terms of us being able to make this space for the kind of governance of your own making. And then on Monday, we were able to sign with the Secwepemc Nation an agreement with the province of British Columbia and Canada on child and family services. We are finding coast to coast to coast that the assertion of jurisdiction on child and family services, on being able to look after your children and bring your children home, has been a huge incentive of people to get to a table and to be able to assert that jurisdiction so that you can also have your children grow up with a secure personal cultural identity, and that is the rights of and well-being of Indigenous children and youth to be raised as Indigenous children and youth. It means that the work that Treaty 8 did on establishing an office in Edmonton for children on and off reserve, that we are very proud of that work, and it's something that Treaty 8 had been working on for almost 20 years, and we've been able to do that. So we need to do two things. My mandate letter asks me to accelerate the progress to self-determination. So the recognition and implementation framework is to do both things. One, to accelerate the progress to self-determination, and as we have heard time and time again, and as Chief Skydier put it, it's time for Canada to get out of the way in order for nations to reconstitute and accelerate the journey to self-determination. We need to create the space, or as Professor Joyce Grain said, vacate the space, to create nations with a governance of your own making, with your own laws, traditional legal practices, customs, and determine who your citizens are. Secondly, we are responding to the asks of the rights holders in modern treaties and agreements who have been insisting on codifying a better way for Canada to be held accountable in honoring its agreements and for all government departments to honor the agreement. As the Land Claim Coalition insisted, there must be a mechanism to ensure that Canada lives up to the agreements it has signed. They have suggested perhaps a treaty commissioner within the Auditor General's office, or an oversight body that would report directly to Parliament, or maybe both. And yesterday at the meeting with the New Alliance of BC Modern Treaty Nations, they were clear that the agreements cannot just be words on paper, they have to make things better for their people. They were clear the agreements cannot be frozen in time, they have to be living documents. These are the issues that are also being raised at the tables that, on rights recognition right now. But they also explain that the changes need to be based on our new approaches that remove extinguishment, that acknowledge the UN Declaration, and we agree. They reminded me that the relationship is a marriage, not a divorce, and we agree with them. And they reminded me that this will make Canada a better place. It's important for me to reiterate now, the framework does not exist. There isn't a framework. We are working to be able to work with you and your technicians and all of the people with interest in this in working towards what the Prime Minister is asking us to do and put in place before the next election. But I want to reiterate to you, this framework is really a code of conduct for Canada. It's what was consulted in RCAP, it's what's in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and it's what the TRC asked us to do. But it's also what generations of Indigenous leaders have been demanding. We are responding to your asks and the asks of a generation of your leaders. This is a full box of rights. It's self-determination. It's the ability to hold Canada to account. I had a meeting yesterday afternoon at Squatch Eyes Lodge with artists and authors, and knowledge keeper Shane Point taught me the Coast Salish word for listening, Queenomstum. he reminded me that the artists are the people who make sense for the rest of us and who are able to open the hearts and minds of Canadians. I promised him that I was listening. They expressed that great changes need to be made. They expressed that ignorance is violence, and that the work they're doing in art and literature and all dance, in all of these things, is actually trying to eradicate the ignorance. It is trying to teach Canadians what they never learned in school, and to also be able to inspire a new generation of artists and authors that can actually begin to write down the history and prepare a better future. They said that we really do need to do this together. I remember, I think most of you know that when Jody Wilson-Raybould was your BC Regional Chief, she designed a triptych that actually was for the governance toolkit. And as you can see that the post-colonial door was closed, and then it was partially open, and then flung open. I think what we're trying to do now is to latch that door open. We don't want any future government be able to take us backwards. Some have said that maybe we need a big boulder in front of that door so it stays open. Some have said they want that door off the hinges so that nobody can ever, ever, ever stop the progress to self-determination. So together we get to decide how we do that. How do we get that door latched open, or the boulder moved in front, or the door right off the hinges, although it's a pretty beautiful door. We just want to say that this is an exciting time. It is about that if we do this together, that we can think about how we inspire all Canadians, that the rights and the recognition of rights and implementation of Indigenous rights should be a badge of honor for all Canadians. It should be something that is important to Canadians as Medicare or the Charter, that they see their country doing something right, and that is righting the wrongs of the past, but also moving forward in a way where Canada will honor these inherent and treaty rights. So I'm here to just say we are listening. Queen Amsterdam, we need to and are wanting to rebuild the trust. But we do know that trust can only be gained by action. I believe we can do this. I believe that we can do this together. Let's do this together. Miigwech, hi, hi, hi,
Thanks, Minister, for those words. And Chiefs, we did say, and we did make that commitment that if and when we do bring ministers, they will have the podium. But if they speak, they have to be prepared to take questions. So Chief, she's quite prepared to take questions. So if you got questions, start lining up, get to the mics, because that's how we make these assemblies more effective. They're your assemblies. And so we always ask, how can we make these better? And so we're going to bring access to all the ministers, all the decision makers, the premiers. I'd like to get the clerk of the Privy Council here someday so you guys can have questions too. So I really appreciate the words, Minister. Good words, good comments. Just before turning to the Chiefs, you mentioned a lot of Supreme Court decisions. And we go back to Siwi, to Sparrow, to Calder, to Marshall, to Delgamuukw, to Tsilhqot'in. We always say the judicial branch is respecting Aboriginal rights and title and treaty rights. Unfortunately, the legislative and the executive branch don't keep up. And that's what we've got to fix. That's what we've got to work towards. And that's the path we see moving forward. I want to make a couple of points. When you said treaty commissioner, wow, my ears perked up. They perked up a little bit because the Crown, on behalf of the Queen, entered into treaty relationships nation to nation. And so having the proper terms of reference and authority for treaty implementation, because that's how this country was built, sharing land and resources. But a Crown's very high up. And so we've got to look at ways to explore things for treaty implementation and enforcement as we move forward. So I just wanted to say that, and I see the chiefs are lining up because that's good. So I just want to say that and thank you for your words. We're all in this together. Nobody's going anywhere. Got to find that good common ground. So, oh, sorry. I'm taking over for the co-chairs already here. Sorry.
So we see quite a lineup. We have done our best to make an order to this and also do the best to get what we can within the time. So we'll go first to microphone number 3, please.
Thank you.
You want to respond?
This on? Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Chair and your co-chair partner for doing a very good job over the last several days in the work that we have in front of us. Firstly, I want to thank our leadership across this country for the kind of decisions and the direction that is being provided each within ourselves. On the third door of that picture were the carvings, the beautiful art from the West Coast. All of us were on the other side of that door looking this way. We have the snow and the beautiful mountains, and it looked like my own territory, actually. My name is Edward John Kyle Joe, Grand Chief, Glasden Nation. I'm also an elected member of the First Nations Summit Executive. I want to congratulate firstly our national chief on the re-election, and together with the regional chiefs and the chiefs across this country, we have tremendous work in front of us. Chiefs in British Columbia, First Nations in British Columbia, key priority we have is about our land and our territories and our resources and the inherent rights that we have. And so this is the issue that we've been grappling with. The doctrine of discovery gave the mandate to James Douglas, the very first governor of this province, to issue a proclamation on February 14, 1859. And this is what the proclamation said in part: all lands in British Columbia and the mines and minerals therein belong to the Crown in fee. A proclamation that stripped our lands away from our peoples into the authority under the jurisdiction of the provincial Crown. That was an illegal take-in, and so we've been fighting this land question since then. And we were happy to see Section 35 in 1982 that recognized Aboriginal rights and treaty rights. Those 17 words in Section 35(1) has spawned countless court cases, including Sparrow, the decision, very first case. So here, the question in the framework that we have, I'm laying the groundwork for a direct question on this because the law is absolutely clear. Section 35(1), Aboriginal and treaty rights are hereby recognized and affirmed. It's a constitution of this country. The word hereby underlined that because hereby means it was effective on April 17, 1982, part of the Constitution. Yet the governments and government lawyers forced us into 35 years of litigation to prove our rights. And so where we have right now in the framework is that the legal rights the Supreme Court has determined need to be reflected in the framework. As we go forward past this engagement process now, the next step is a partnership process where we sit down together and co-develop drafting instructions and legislation. So let me just take one part of one of the cases.
Yeah, we're just asking for the question, please. We do have quite the lineup.
Yes, I understand that. Aboriginal title, this in Chilcotin, paragraph 73. Aboriginal title confers ownership rights, including 1, the right to decide how the land will be used. 2, the right of enjoyment and occupancy of the land. 3, the right to possess the land. 4, the right to the economic benefits of the land. And 5, the right to proactively use and manage the land. These are our legal rights. We need the Crown governments to recognize this, so now we can make decisions about our lands and benefit from it. It needs to be reflected. I'm not going to ask, will Canada reflect this in the framework? We need to see it reflected in the framework. So that's just on the land itself. There's so many other issues, but my question would be, well, I don't even want to ask a question. I'm just going to say it needs to be in the framework. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 4, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Collins from Fort William First Nation.
And who are?
I'm what?
Sorry, I'm getting from both sides. Pardon me. Please proceed.
What's your problem? No.
I got getting back talk over here from my co-chair. Pardon me.
I was just going to say, because I'm not wearing a green Lambert, you're going to kick me off here, but I was going to turn green if you did, so.
We do.
But my point is, this is the question, and first of all, National Chief, congratulations, but I thought about the 6162 legislation that we talked about yesterday, and we passed a resolution in Regina and supporting Fort William in the movement of the denouncing 6162 legislation that has an impact on our young people in our community today. And I also asked Minister Bennett this question at that forum to address this issue and address it under her policy and her direction. And the other thing I want to talk about is our young people with disabilities. I missed the opportunity to speak on the resolution yesterday, but I asked this government, and I asked Justin, your Prime Minister, Minister Bennett, to talk about and deal with the adequate resources for the young people with disabilities and making sure they have the same opportunity as us in our communities. And I want to see adequate resources addressed so those young people have the opportunity to live and work in our society.
Thank you. Microphone number 2, please.
Good morning, Chief Wilfred King, Kiasagi Nishnabek, Gull Bay First Nation. Yesterday I posed a question to all the candidates, and I felt the answer I got was inadequate by all of them, but I did support Perry Bellegarde yesterday in his leadership because I felt that he had the best opportunity to bring our issues forward. But my question that I have is that we talk about reconciliation, but yet our First Nation and many others across Canada are forced to use the colonial legal apparatus that we're forced to utilize. And to me, I see there's a disconnect here between your message of the Liberal platform on reconciliation of Aboriginal and treaty rights, but yet many of our First Nations are forced either to go to the colonial courts or through some sort of process that does not recognize those rights. So I want to know if your government is true to the concept of true reconciliation rather than the adversarial approach to going through the colonial courts. Miigwech.
Thank you, and I'll turn to Minister for some remarks, and then we'll go back to the floor. So the microphone to my right, please.
Thank you very much for those questions, and I thank Grand Chief John for reminding us of the body of decisions that need to be recognized in the way forward. And as you know, in the TRC calls to action, they suggested that the doctrine of discovery and terra nullius be dealt with in a renewed royal proclamation, but I think that we need to decide together how we deal with that. But certainly in meeting with the Chilcotin chiefs yesterday, the issue of land and title is very clear. But what we're trying to do is say not everybody should have to go to the Supreme Court to be able to assert and use their title. And so that's why I think we're looking forward to co-developing the drafting instructions and to be able to really recognize and affirm the Section 35 rights. The other piece that was pointed out to me during the process is that in 1982, tremendous work was done on sections 1 to 34 in terms of the Charter to make sure all the laws and policies of Canada were in keeping with the Charter, and that work was not done on section 35, and that's the work that we need to do together. So thank you for that, and I think Chief Collins, yeah, I think that, as you know, the Ministerial Special Representative Claudette Dumont-Smith is out dealing with this next phase of the Deschanel decision and sorting out the fairness. But eventually, we expect that self-determining nations will determine who their citizens are, and that we want to get out of that business, including we shouldn't have a registrar that sorts out who's got status, who doesn't have status, that is not our business. And so that is the work we want to do. And I think, Chief Collins, as chair of the Subcommittee on Persons with Disabilities for 5 years, I couldn't agree with you more that we need inclusion by design, and we need people who differently abled are able to contribute in their communities. And I know that Minister Quattro and others are working very hard on this. And Chief King, yeah, I agree. My job is to get us out of court and stop the adversarial approach and try and move on a path of what Willie Littlechild calls reconciliation, that actually will get rid of the colonial approaches and allow us to move to a table so that we do not have to litigate everything, that we can actually recognize those rights and work with you to exercise those rights. So that's what we're trying to do.
So we'll go to microphone number 4, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Tom Brissett from the Kettle and Stony Point First Nation. Minister Bennett, I think you said something that I agree with. The status quo is not acceptable. And the one thing I have to remind you of is we come from an area of pre-Confederation treaties. Our treaties were with Great Britain. And one of the things they told us is we were going to share this land. And since then, they've taken everything, shared it around the world, and given us the crumbs. And that's not acceptable. You come to our territories and our communities, when you come to the reserve, you run out of paved roads. And when we run out of paved roads, nobody looks to develop anything in that area. Businesses draw people in for activities to come in down a dirt road. And I think that's a specific reason why our people live in large quantities in where we live. It's not 1 or 2 people along a deep stretch of road. There's a community about the size of a municipality, and we don't have the same resources, the same infrastructure that those municipalities do. And I'm asking, where's our share? Because we're not getting any money. We're getting contribution agreements from the government of a government that we agreed that we would share the benefits of this land, and we're not benefiting. Everybody in the world's benefiting off of Canada except the Indigenous people here. We suffer with problems of inadequate water, inadequate health means. Our education is below standard. We don't have nothing to encourage our young people for a job because there's no infrastructure put that allows big corporations or companies to come and set factories up in our communities. Yet cities are given money. They coerce people to come in and build to create jobs for their citizens. But us, no, we're always on the lower end of the pole here, and I'm tired because our children are educated. I've got a young man who's a Supreme Court judge from my community. I've got numbers of lawyers. I got health professionals, teachers, and yet why aren't we getting more? Because we're struggling with the outside to compete with wages that our people can't compete with. And we lose our teachers, we lose everything because the outside has money we never get. So what we can scrounge off our itty-bitty contribution agreement year after year, that's what we got to amass and save. And how many emergencies do we deal with along this way where that money has to be taken and put into community emergencies? That's what I'm talking about, is the reality of capital. The cities around here are well maintained and looked after. Their citizens are happy. But for us, I'm sorry, we're on the bottom end of the poll, and the status quo definitely is not acceptable. So please get us a share of the gross domestic product or whatever the finances country's getting, and cut our half off and give it to us. And then we won't be begging you for anything. We'll be self-sufficient. Miigwech.
Microphone number 4, please.
Well, first of all, I would like to say, Perry, I won my vote. Congratulations.
Thanks, Chief.
And Carolyn, thank you for coming to our assembly and staying to take questions from the chiefs. That's been demanded by the chiefs now at many assemblies that the ministers attend, because they're the decision makers. At the time of Confederation, Canada made a very fundamental mistake that's impacted very negatively for generations on our people. They gave the control of the lands and resources to the provinces. In order for any framework to work, the provinces have to agree to share the wealth that drives the economy, which the federal government benefit from taxation, corporations benefit from through corporate profits. But the First Nations, whose traditional land it is, have not benefited. And if the provinces won't willingly share, then the federal government's got to pick up the slack, because they caused all of that to take place at the time of Confederation. And so it disappoints me when I see First Ministers conferences going on to talk about the business of the country, and our leaders are on the outside looking in. There's unfinished business here. There's injustice that has to be rectified. And the federal government needs to play a serious leadership role in making sure that our voices can be heard by those premiers who have an obligation to be part of correcting the past. And so that's the kind of leadership I'm looking for. I don't want any kind of constitutional discussion where your words are inserted to serve the interests of the state, like only existing rights are, because that can be interpreted, lawyers can, and then it leaves the chiefs in a position to have to fight the provinces in court in the absence of the federal government to achieve anything. Sometimes it's even the right to catch a fish so their families can eat. I mean, this is ridiculous. Canada, the colonizing nation, have become rich on our land and resources, and our people should not remain poor, and it's time now that be corrected. And so Canada needs to find a way to make the provinces share, and I'd like to hear from you, what is it that Canada can do to make that happen?
Again, microphone number 4, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm Cheryl Casimir. I'm representing Chief Mary Masila from the Tobacco Plains Indian Band, a member community of the Ktunaxa Nation, of which I'm a citizen of. First of all, I want to acknowledge the territory of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish, and acknowledge them for hosting us, being the gracious hosts that they were during the Assembly, and to acknowledge your re-election, National Chief. Congratulations. I have a couple of comments that I'd like to make. First of all, my first comment is in relation to the agenda. Given the importance of the work that we have at hand relating to the development, co-development of legislation, I'm just really concerned about how this was set up. Today we have concurrent sessions on education, health, Jordan's Principle, housing, water, treaties, all important. But given the tight legislative timeline that we have for this recognition legislation work, the child welfare legislation work, the SIA legislation work, I don't know why this agenda didn't align with those priorities, and I'm just making a point of that because I think that we should have utilized the time available to us to have some fulsome discussions on these very important matters. Moving on to some of the comments that you've made, Minister, you said, what is it that needs to be done for Canada to get out of the way? I think it really is quite simple. It's just a matter of recognizing our inherent right and our sovereignty, and get out of the way. And I fully support fully support the comments made by the speakers previous to me in terms of the need to be able to have full access to our territories and the resources that are on our territories. It always makes my heart heavy when I hear our respected leadership calling for more resourcing to do work in community and to support their citizens in their community when we are the richest people in this land, or should be. Our territories are rich with resources. But why is it that we are still the poorest in this country? That has got to stop. And my final comment, as you know, Minister, I'm a political executive with the First Nations Summit in British Columbia here. We represent those First Nations who are participating in the modern-day treaty negotiations, the BC treaty process. You had indicated, your government indicated to us that treaty loans were going to be forgiven. We have still not seen anything happening on the ground. And if Canada is serious about reconciliation with us, do something to prove it. Just wipe off that treaty debt so that we can get on with our lives. Those debts are holding heavy on our books, and it impedes us from being able to do things. So I implore you to please get rid of that debt today. Thank you.
So we'll go back to a microphone to my right, please. Minister Bennett.
Thanks so much. And no, I think Chief Tom talked eloquently about the need for land and to share the benefits and how that links with jobs, wages, access to capital, the fact that you as communities also have to protect language and culture and education and all of those things. So I think that is something that we really want to work with you on in terms of resource revenue sharing, how you get access to that. And I think the Prime Minister mentioned resource revenue sharing in his remarks to you in June, I think, or May. And so I think that Chief Marickel's right, that there is an unfinished business there with the provinces and territories. I think that it is something we just have to keep moving on. I think that places like Ontario that have committed to that are because of things like Ring of Fire, that we have to just keep moving on that. But one of the other suggestions has been that there be a dispute resolution mechanism or process that ends up avoiding people having to go to court and prove this. How do you even amongst nations have a dispute mechanism that would be eventually trusted as it is in the Inuit land claim territory? So I think that's something we want to work with, and I think that it's something that we are certainly working with the provinces and the territories about how we share this land fairly and how we can move beyond, again, the status quo not being acceptable. I think that, Cheryl, we've begun the process on loans by the grants and contributions to be able to fund the tables going forward on loan forgiveness or loan repayment or all of those, that's a work in progress that we'll do with each of the communities. But it is, we certainly know that we are all impatient.
Thank you very much, Minister Bennett, and thank you to everybody who's come forward with questions. I acknowledge everybody who's waiting to ask questions. I regret this time. We've just wrapped up with our 9:40 aspect. We've squeezed extra time out this morning to ensure that we got time for questions. So my regrets to our chiefs who are waiting for questions, but I would like to thank you for taking them. And we will now turn to my co-chair for the next item of the agenda.
Thank you very much. I also share the regrets of the co-chair that our struggle with our time challenges causes us to move, but we do have the honorings of the two families, and we are well behind that schedule, so I do apologize, chiefs. We are turning to the family of the Stiers family from Six Nations to address the Assembly regarding the criminal justice matters and their experience in the justice system. A gentleman named Mr. Kill was acquitted on June 27, 2018 for the killing of John Stiers, and the family of John Stiers is here. Again, it's the family issues around our justice system and, you know, the irregularities there. We are joined by the family of Mr. Stiers, including his mom, and they are joined by the family of Colton Bushy. So with that, please help me welcome the Chief of Six Nations, Chief Ava Hill.
Sego, and thank you for allowing me to have some time here on the agenda. And I too apologize to the chiefs that were standing at the mic and wanted to ask questions, because I think that's an important part. But we also have an important message. Harold has given you a bit of a background. I think it was in January of this year that our people went into outrage because Gerald Stanley was found not guilty for killing Colton Bushy. And we were outraged, particularly when there was no appeal. And it seemed like it was okay for non-natives to go kill Indians and get away with it. Well, it happened again. It happened again in our territory. A young man from our community was shot and killed. And 1 month ago, the man that killed him was found not guilty for self-defense. And we said that our young man's lives are not worth more than a quad or a truck, because that's what's happening in this country now. And we also said that racism has reared its ugly head in this country again. And when I found out of the not guilty verdict of Peter Cahill, I was at the All-Ontario Chiefs Conference. And I addressed the chiefs at that time. And I said, what are we going to do about it? We're the leaders. We're the chiefs. What are we going to do about this? These families are asking us. We need to do something about the justice system in this country. Not only federal governments, but provincial governments. And we as chiefs need to do that. So we brought the families. We've reached out, the Stiers family has reached out to the Bushy family, and we've met last night, and it was a very emotional meeting for us. And they're bringing messages to you chiefs. And the first, I don't want to take too much time because it's their time to talk. So the first one I want to bring up to speak to you is my niece, Lindsay Hill. She is John Stiers' partner and the mother of his two beautiful little girls. And after that, Deborah Stiers is his mom, and her sister will speak. And then I'm going to turn it over to Eleanor Sunchild, who will introduce members of the Bushy family, so they can give their message to you. Okay, I'll bring up Lindsay. Can you read it? Make it bigger.
Sego, I would like to thank the Assembly for giving me this opportunity to share my views and experiences within the Canadian justice system. My name is Lindsay Hill, and I'm a Mohawk from Six Nations. My spouse was Jonathan Stiers, and we have two amazing, beautiful daughters, Sophia, who is 4, and Zoe, who just turned 3. I was tucking in Sophia in for bed this past Monday evening, and we heard sirens. A police car drove by our house. Sophia then said to me, "That's the police. Maybe someone is doing something bad or stealing." When that happens, we call the police. I said, "That's right, baby girl," and my eyes instantly watered up. After I thought how a 4-year-old knew that you should call the police, I myself have never talked to her about that. My 4-year-old daughter knew the right thing to do, not to leave your house armed with a loaded shotgun and shoot someone twice and kill them. And this is what happened to John. And again, the Canadian system found a killer not guilty. John loved Sophia and Zoe so much. It was so sweet to see him with them. Fix Sophia's hair. She wasn't even 2 at the time. I would always say, those are my girls. I'm going to be the favorite parent. He would get toys out and play with them. It was like he was having more fun than them sometimes. And he was so happy and proud to be a father. Sophia and Zoe know that their daddy is in the sky. They know that he's not coming back. It amazes me how intelligent they are. Sophia sees me cry sometimes and she'll say, "It's okay, Mommy. Are you crying because you miss Daddy?" She talks about missing him too. She will randomly say, "I miss Daddy so much." And I asked her what she would like to tell people about her daddy, and she said, "I love Daddy so much." John was taken from our daughters. All those happy moments that he would have had with our girls are gone. The girls and I won't get to hear his laugh, see him smile, get a hug from him. There are problems with juries in the Canadian justice system. That's not a question in my mind. But that's not the only problem. It's a drop in the bucket. The Canadian justice system is a system that allows a person to act as judge, jury, and executioner. The system lacks any accountability for taking a precious, sacred life. All the areas of the system need to be thoroughly examined, from policing to the courts. All the areas need change, not just juries. Change that improves systems so that people can actually get justice. My civil lawyer said to me that people have assumed that I was unemployed and had asked him about this. And I asked, why is that? Because those are the type of stereotypes and biases that we as original people of Turtle Island face every day. If you ask me, we're not really making any progress for the betterment of our people. Things are getting worse again. They're returning to our lives having no value. In John's case, the Crown is appealing the acquittal of John's killer. But in my mind, this is not a victory or something to be happy about. It's a relief and very bittersweet, because there are no guarantees that this system will actually provide John with the justice that he deserves. And I sat in this room yesterday and I listened to Perry Bellegarde say that my family deserves justice, that John deserves justice. And Mr. Bellegarde, I hope you were being honest and you're going to fight with everything you have to make that happen. Because I want you to consider this. I want every single person in this room, the chiefs, people here, to consider this. What if it were someone you love that got killed? What would you do? I'm asking you, I'm asking everyone here, all the chiefs, I'm begging you to change this broken system so that children like Sophia and Zoe don't have to lose a parent to such senseless violence. I need everyone to stand together to push that dramatic change forward, because that's the only way it's going to happen. Our future generations deserve much better than what we currently have. And enough is enough, and we need change. Our people are being killed. Too many lives have been unjustly and unnecessarily taken. So now I'll ask you all of this question. How much are you going to fight for John and for the others like him and for the families? Nyawa.
Okay, Deb. Ronnie. We're not going to hear from John's mom.
I'm Deborah Stiers, and I want to see if you can change this world. And Jonathan was killed. And I want to ask you, if anybody can say that I love John so much. And I want justice done for this and anyone else. Okay?
This statement was done by Debbie, we nickname her Bobby, and our immediate family. On February 4th, 2016, life was different after my son was shot to death. Not just once, but twice. This was one of the most difficult things to say. He was killed by a man who claimed he was defending himself against an unarmed man. I'm reading the wrong one, sorry. He says he was part of Canadian military who served this country. He says he acted reasonably in a manner. Through the years, Jonathan suppressed his emotions over the years. He was troubled. But we don't condone what he felt necessary in life to do as a young man. He never had a chance to turn his life around. In reality, the law dictates that a 2001 pickup truck is more valuable than my son's life. A 12-person jury unanimously agreed that Peter Cahill was not guilty in taking my son's life. My family was present in the courtroom to hear the verdict and felt surreal at the point of shock and disbelief that someone could murder my son without any consequences. What kind of Canada do we live in? The current justice system is not set out to apply the law without prejudice. The law merit prejudice, or privilege, sorry. And in this case, precedent was set that could have impacted Peter Cahill's decision to kill. He may have known, he would have been found not guilty. He questioned this as soon as he was put in the back of the police cruiser. He asked immediately after, does self-defense mean anything? When many of other individuals in Canada feel that their life may be in danger, we are taught at a very young age to pick up the phone and call for help. He felt he didn't need help. He took Canadian laws into his own hands and took the life of just another First Nations person. The Prime Minister, Justice Trudeau, said, we have to do better. yet there is no evidence of any action. We First Nations people want action now. Justice for Jonathan will be another chance in this current system, with the appeal finally going forward. We would like to thank everyone for standing strong together as First Nations people and fight for the rights of Indigenous justice within Canada. Thank you. Yowie.
Good morning. My name is Eleanor Sunchild. I come from the Thunderchild Territory in Treaty 6, Saskatchewan. I'm lawyer for the Bushey family. This has been a long journey for them since the verdict of February 9th of this year, when Gerald Stanley was acquitted of the murder of Colton Bushey. The family has spoken out continuously about the injustice, about how they've been treated by this justice system. And they always said that they did not want this to happen to anybody else. And when the acquittal of Peter Cahill was decided, the family felt that pain once again, that grief. And this pain and this grief, it's real, and it's a crucial issue within our communities. It continues to happen within our First Nation communities and in Canada. I ask the government, when are you going to ensure that our first people, your first people, the Indigenous people of Canada, are protected? When are you going to ensure that there are no more violent killings of our Indigenous men? It has to stop. And to our leaders, you need to protect our young men, our young people, our people from being killed senselessly. It needs to stop. And so I ask that we take action, that you take action to ensure that these injustices don't continue anymore, that our people are protected, that we can live together in a country where our people don't have to fear for their safety, where there are no more Colton Busheys, where there are no more Jonathan Styrys. Because we were here, this is our land, and we deserve to live here without fear, in peace. And so I am very happy to be here with this family from Six Nations in solidarity. I'm not happy at all for the reason that we're here, to demand our protection, to demand that we have justice within our own territories. We shouldn't have to do that. But it was a very good day yesterday meeting this family, and the healing that I witnessed happen between these two separate people from opposite sides of this country. It's through the voice of these men, through Colton and Jonathan, that things can change. So I'm going to introduce the Bushey family now. His mom, Debbie Baptiste, is here. His sister, Jade Brown Tatusis. His brothers, Jace Bushey and William Bushey. And his uncle, Alvin Baptiste. And we'd like to thank Chief Hill and the Styrys family for inviting us here to speak with you and to meet with you. And we shared some powerful moments together in healing. So now I'll turn the microphone over to Debbie, who will speak for Colton. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon. I'm so overwhelmed to be here. I feel really positive that maybe something could actually happen now. that our voices are actually being heard, that nobody's going to sweep my son's death under the carpet. Time's not going to heal. We'll never heal, for none of us, for anybody that lost a parent, that lost their loved ones. You never forget them. Every day, I feel that pain. And how dare that family say that time will heal? The RCMP helped cover up. They did a bulged up job purposely to help Gerald Stanley and his family cover up a murder they committed. Those guys are walking murders, walking around free. And then it makes it okay for them to go ahead and keep killing our loved ones. The RCMP picking them up, giving them where they end up in prison and we never see them again, over and over again. And they're shooting them unarmed. Something has to be done with the RCMP and a justice system. This can't go on anymore. I don't want any more deaths. I don't want a whole bunch of families lined up behind me telling the same story. It's not okay they killed my son. That was my baby. The justice system needs to change. The welfare system needs to change. They took my grandchildren right after I buried my son. The more pain they put on my family, how much pain can we endure? I don't know, but we're here. And we're speaking, and I will not stop speaking, and they will not shut me up. My son was a good boy. And I don't want people to forget what they did. How Gerald Stanley and his family got away from murdering my son. RCMP, I know they covered it up and they helped them with the judges, the jury. We didn't have a chance for justice. That needs to change, the whole system, the foster care. I want my grandchildren back. It's going on 2 years now. They still got them. But I want everybody to know I will not be quiet, and I'm going to keep going. I am my son's voice. And we'll know, everybody will let everybody in this world know the injustice they did in North Battleford. Thank you for listening. Let's not let this happen to no more families. I don't want people burying their loved ones, parents burying their kids. That's not right. Chiefs, do something. Help us. And where's my chief, Clint Watney? I haven't seen that guy in 2 years. I'm sorry for getting emotional, but this is coming from my heart. Thank you. Hi.
Thank you Thank you for being here and for giving us this opportunity to speak and to stand here once again. This is my family's third time addressing the Assembly of First Nations meetings on behalf of my brother. This is the third time that we've been here advocating for support, and not just support, but action. And now we stand here today with another family who has endured injustice and who's had loss and pain and is pleading not just for support, but for action, for changes. We've been up here too many times now. The first time we advocated for physical support in the courthouse, to occupy that space, to be visible, and to show your physical support. And for that, I am advocating that if the appeal goes through for the Stiers family, that you go to the courthouse and that you sit with them and that you experience it and that you feel it, but most of all, that you support them and shower them with love and strength, because it means so much to have that physical presence, that body occupying that space with you through those difficult times. That's all we ask for, is support and action. Families should not be up here crying and pouring their heart out and begging for leadership to do something about what's going on our lands to our people, where it seems to be acceptable to say shoot, shovel, and shut up. Those are comments that we've endured, and that seems to be the attitudes of settlers within this territory, and that is not right. And I know I don't have to say that, but I feel like I have to. These are the attitudes that we live with and that we are enduring, and we spoke it from the start that we did not want to see another family going through this process and enduring this pain. And yet here we are today with another family on this stage in tears and pain and heartache, and all we're asking is for our leadership to step forward and to do something about it. We should not have to come back and ask, what have you done? We should actually be seeing it, hearing it, and feeling it. That's what we're asking for from our leadership. We are pleading with you. As Lindsay said, the justice system doesn't just stop with the jury selection. It's the entire colonial process that is not working and continues to oppress our people and silence our families. I do not wish this on anyone in this room. This should not have to happen to you for you to take action and do something about it. If the appeal goes through, I urge you to go and sit with that family in that courtroom for as many days as you can, because that experience is not something that you can put into words. So once again, I thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I pray that we do not have to come here again and address the leadership, nor ask the question of what are you going to do and what have you done thus far, and why haven't things been taken action? Why is this still happening?
I want to thank both of the families and all of their helpers for sharing. We've asked the Saskatchewan drummers, and they've gracefully offered to sing a healing song as we conclude this part of our recognitions and honorings. Microphone 1. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, as they make their exit, please, a round of applause and gracious appreciation to the families. We'll ask the staff to make sure the technician is here to help us with the elevator. As you'll see on your agenda, we are now turning to the honoring shortly for our beloved former regional chief for the Yukon, Michael Smith, who passed away in 2017. It is the custom in the Yukon that while we did a moment of silence and acknowledged that passing in respect to the family and their ways, we waited a year before we did the proper honoring, and we will turn to that shortly. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll ask you to welcome to the stage and to the podium the AFN Yukon Regional Chief Kluane Adamek and Squamish Nation Councillor Chris Lewis, who will help with the honoring of our former regional chief. They are also joined by members of Mike Smith's family, so please welcome them to the podium.
Yaket Sutat, Age Yohatu Asauk, Kluan Man Kai Iche, Ganach Chish, Squamish, Ganach Chish, Musqueam, Ganach Chish, Tsleil-Waututh. I wanted to firstly acknowledge the families for sharing their story with us. Our hearts are heavy and go out to you in this very hard time, and so wanted to extend that on behalf of our region. And I'm joined by a number of us from our region today as we bring honor to the former regional chief, Mike Smith Shakuni. Firstly, I wanted to introduce the family who has joined us, and I'd like to introduce with me Surtakten, Chris Lewis, Squamish Nation, who's going to be our speaker. As is protocol, Chris will be joining me and we'll be doing the honoring together today. I'm joined here with former regional the late Chief Mike Smith's family, Bobby Smith, Chief Steve Smith, Kayla Smith, Karen Smith, Mike Jr., Rob Smith, Reese Smith Keeler, and Kevin Keeler. I also wanted to invite the Yukon delegation, those who are here. If you'd like to join in the honoring, you're welcome to join in the front of the stage. We also have a slideshow that has been shared with us by the family that will be playing throughout our ceremony. And as per protocol, I would like to introduce Chris Kashish.
Hatsquel Tanoyap, Siams, Siyoyokwa, Si Takton, Koshamitsnas, Kahot Mashokhamel. First of all, I just want to recognize the space that we've just entered and pay homage and respect to those two families that we just listened to. What we are going to conduct here today is called Otsam. It's a witnessing ceremony, also in an Nsemco, which means to wrap, to blanket our family of our late loved one. Just a little explanation, this is a Coast Salish protocol where we call witnesses as verifiers to witness what we are going to do and what's going to take place today. And that we will come to you if anybody asks what's going on. I want to thank the family and the regional chief for asking me to be their voice on behalf of the family to conduct this sacred work. We will be calling 5 witnesses to witness this work. In our protocol, we would ask the witnesses to respond at the end, but I know we're running tight on time, so we will cut the ceremony a little bit short. First witness we would like to call is National Chief Perry Bellegarde. Next witness, Elder Chuck Hume. I'll ask the witnesses just to stand when I call your name. And our family will come and shake your hand, so you won't need to come up here. Osiam. Chief Richard Sidney, the family would like to call you as a witness today. Thank you, Siam. Elder Elmer Cruchain, the family would like to call you as a witness to today, Siam, to witness the work. Shaishkol Wit, Siam, the family would like to call you as a witness today. On behalf of the family, I want to thank those witnesses that were called. Also, on behalf of the family, they want to let you all know that you are all witnesses to this ceremony as well, that we respect your presence, we respect that you've honored the invitation to sit here and listen to the work of the family. At this time, I would like to call up our helpers to Nsemco, our family members, to wrap them. As our family wraps our honored guest, the family of our late regional chief, I will take this time as the speaker to explain a little bit about this. If you would come to our longhouses, we wouldn't tell you. You would just see it happen, but I think as we have visitors from all over Turtle Island, from many home fires, to the Coast Salish people, we call this Nsemco, which means to wrap. This ceremony represents that we are standing this family up to honor them, to honor the sacrifice that they've given us, to allow our late loved one, who we are honoring today, the late regional chief, for allowing him to be with all of us when he worked with us and walked amongst us. The family here that you see getting wrapped were the ones that were at home while he was away working with us on behalf of the region of Yukon and on behalf of all the First Nations, and now we know Canada. So in Coast Salish custom, the blanket represents love. The regional chief and her staff wanted to stand up the family and wrap them in this blanket as a token of their appreciation and love, in that as they go through this journey of healing, of mourning, that they know that they are not alone. That the blanket signifies that all of the people here that are honoring this ceremony, that love and that respect goes into that blanket. So when they are having hard times, they can grab the blanket and wrap themselves up. Because we all know when we lose loved ones, there's tough times and tough days ahead. So this is a little explanation of what you are witnessing today. It's one of the ways we know how to ensure that our families feel protected and that they feel loved. So thank you to the witnesses for that little time for explanation. At this time, I would like to call Regional Chief Kluane up to provide some remarks to the witnesses and to all those called here today on her reflections of the late Regional Chief Mike Smith.
First and foremost, wanted to again hold up the family of Shakuni from the Dakhluwaiti clan, the Killer Whale people, of which I'm also a clan, and there's a number of us here from that clan, from the Yukon. Shakuni Mike Smith, who worked alongside many of our executive colleagues and the national chief, was the AFN Yukon Regional Chief from 2012 to 2017. He served as the chief of the Kwanlin-Dun First Nation from 2003 to 2011. In 2005, he was the signatory to Kwanlin-Dun's land claim and self-government agreements. Mike was also the chair of the Council of Yukon Indians, now the Council of Yukon First Nations for some time, and myself and Grand Chief Peter Johnston joined and to thank their witnesses today. We pay our respect and appreciation for the outstanding work and contributions Mike shared with us before his untimely passing. Shakuni was an incredible champion of our region's land claim and self-government agreements and contributed decades to supporting and advancing Indigenous rights, not only in the Yukon, but beyond. We deeply acknowledge his incredible dedication to advancing our Yukon First Nation priorities. He was a trailblazer, and his legacy lives on through his family and his contributions to our people. Again, on behalf of the AFN Yukon region, our region, joined by many of our chiefs, elders, delegates, Ganach Chish, thank you.
Hoichuk, Regional Chief. At this time, if I can ask the delegation to please stand, we will take a moment of silence to honor the spirit of our late loved one and to honor those that are being wrapped in Nsemco today, that we stand in unity with them. Hoichuk, thank you. You can be seated. At this time, the family wants to recognize Chief Steve Smith, the brother of late Mike Smith, to come up and say a few words on behalf of the family. Osium.
First of all, I'd just like to open up by saying that I am a humble visitor into this country, and that the words that I speak are spoken from a basis of love. So I pray to the Creator that I do not speak words that will cause any hurt or misgivings. Ainji kachnuchuye tanke. Chluchacha nuhalkamke, ING Danathiada Shalela Eshiyi Ye Kodan, Gonalchish, Squamish, Slewatooth, Musquium Ye Kodan, Nkayi, ING Gitlamet EJ Dunke, Dachluadi Ayachat. Tlingitke, ING Yukon Ninja. My name is Steve Smith. I gave you my traditional name, Kachnuch, and I am the chief of the Champagnat First Nation people. I thank the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people for allowing us to come to your country. This is your country. As with ours, we belong to it. I'm so honored to be able to address the Assembly today, and I will speak about my brother, but I wanted to make a short note from his family. My dad was born a fighter, a residential school and Indian hospital survivor, a UBC graduate and one of Yukon's first Indigenous lawyers. He was a very quiet man, but he was also a jokester and a tease, a man with a great laugh who never failed to help and inspire those around him. Add to that list a pretty awesome dad who played catch, Monopoly, hide and seek. When he got home off the road, it wasn't all perfect. Maybe taking your 8 and 6-year-old kids to Jaws. Wasn't that cool? But actually it was. Of course, he wasn't an awesome dad. When he wasn't that awesome dad or that fighter battling for those rights, he was out in the bush living them. It hasn't been a year since we lost you, but it feels like forever, and also feels like yesterday. We miss you. We love you, Pa. Those are from his children. I speak as a younger brother, Handaya Shakuni, my older brother, Mike. Mike was more of a father figure to me longer than my dad was. My dad died over 25 years ago. I only got to spend a short 21 years. But my dad saw in Mike one of those people that had to take up the role to fight for his people. Many of our people do not go into this seeking power and fame. We take it on as a responsibility, and that's the fundamental difference between our people and those who come to this country new. Leadership is responsibility to us. It is something that is bestowed upon us, and we have to take up, and my brother was one of those people that did. He never worked 1 minute other than defending us, you know, the odd time we went to the clinker. He never worked 1 minute, but for fighting for his people. From the day that he went to school, university, and until the day he passed, he was always involved in the fighting for the rights and our rightful place within this Canadian fabric. And it is with that, we'd just like to share with you that he spent many times in many of your lands. He was not only regional chief, he was the lead negotiator, he was the chair of the precursor to the Council of Yukon First Nation, our regional organization. He was the chief of the Kwalindun First Nation. So he spent his life fighting for it. And we're so very honored that all of you are here to share with this time with us. And we cannot express in words how humble and grateful that we are to have you witness this ceremony. We thank the people from Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam for doing their ceremony. Because we are in their country, it honors us so much more that they would do this for us. We are so humble and so very thankful. To the families that spoke before us, as a chief, I commit, as I think all of us do, to supporting you, as did my brother. We would not be honoring him if we let your words fall to the ground. In our way, Tlingit way, Southern Shoshone way, that when someone speaks with their heart and speaks with the hurt that they have, it is up to us to never let those words hit the ground unresponded to. And so I take this time in the honoring of my brother, the time that we take to also honor you and let you know that we will support you, that my family will work to help you if ever you need it, and that your words are a call to action, a continued call to action for always helping our people, and that we will honor your requests, and we will work together with you to ensure that our young people can live the same kind of life that my brother lived It was hard. He went to mission school or residential school. He was sent off to hospital without my mom knowing. But he was able to live a pretty good life after that. He has 3 wonderful children and a beautiful grandson that are the hopes and dreams that he would like us to carry on. That we have the same goal, as was spoken many times over, that we have to work, continue to work, so that our children do not face this terrible thought that we are not human to them, and that we will ensure that they will stand. They are already equals, but we need to make everybody else understand and look at us as equals. Well, sheesh. Well, sheesh. Well, sheesh. We'll see him.
At this time, I would like to call up the National Chief and the Regional Chief. They are going to present the family with a gift. This piece is called Your Inner Potential by Tlingit artist Blake Shakun Lapine by the clan brother of the Dawidi Killer Whale clan.
As is many of our customs, Blake Lapine Shakun carries the same name. And so wanted to bring honor to that name and certainly continue that legacy of leadership. And so to the family, thank you again. Thank you to Chief Smith for your beautiful words. And of course, thank you to the Assembly for supporting us in doing the business that is necessary. So, Ganach Chish.
To the witnesses that were called and all those assembled, this is all the work that the family had in mind, and we put our hands up to you in very much gratitude for this time, for you to take this time out to recognize our late loved one and to recognize and stand up the family. And to the family, on behalf of the family doing the work, that blanket signifies love from all of us in this room to you, and it's a protection as well, to give you that warmth and strength as you move forward from today forward. So on behalf of the family and to all the witnesses that were called, that is all the work. Again, Hoichika, Tamakwichi Snechim, those are our words, and that is it. Wosium.
So at this time, we're going to encourage you to go to the plenary sessions immediately. There are 7 distinct sessions. For the sessions that you're unable to attend, there are the USB keys with the presentations from all the sessions on them, so we encourage you to go there. We are going to recess the plenary here until 1 p.m., and we invite you back here for 1 p.m., which we will be immediately getting into the resolutions. We'll have a short presentation from AFOA and immediately getting into the resolutions. And thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time to uphold the various families here. And we'll see you back here at 1 p.m.